So in this segment, we're going to be discussing PMQs today. I'm going to try and get this video out. It was a spicy one, so I thought it's worth covering. If you guys want to see kind of post PMQs reviews, let me know, and I'll actually start doing these, because I miss doing the live ones, I'll be honest, but can't be helped because of work. So yeah, it was a spicy one today, I think. So let's have a listen.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for his words in welcoming Vaughan Gething to his post as First Minister of Wales. As the first black leader of any European government, it's a historic moment that speaks to the progress and values of modern-day Wales. Yeah, yeah. And I also pay tribute to Mark Drakeford for his long, steady service in Wales.
Yeah. I mean, diversity is important, inclusion and things like that. But the guy that they've elected is more of the Blairite camp than he is of the kind of left wing camp. So it's good, but again, like in terms of policy, actual policy, it doesn't mean a lot. It's not great.
Mr. Speaker, violent prisoners released early because the Tories wrecked the criminal justice system. 3,500 small boat arrivals already this year because the Tories lost control of the borders. Yeah. The NHS struggling to see people because the Tories broke it. Millions paying more on their mortgages. A budget that hit pensioners. A £46 billion hole in his sums. Why is the Prime Minister so scared to call an election?
Because it's going to be the annihilation of his party. Like, let's be honest now. It's really obvious why they don't want to call an election. It's going to be over for them. They're going to be out for at least 5 years, potentially 10 to 15.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said in January, my working assumption is that the election will be in the second half of the year. But I must say, I thought that out of
I've heard people claim their sources are telling them an election would have been called within days of last week. Don't know what's happened to that. And also other people claiming it's going to be in May. So, maybe the Prime Minister is wrong on this.
He'd actually be the most grateful, Mr. Speaker, because he's now actually got time to come up with a plan for Britain. We're all looking forward to finally seeing it.
We're ready. Just call it. Just call it. But Mr. Speaker, he talks a plan. Let's just take his Rwanda policy. When they first announced this gimmick, they claimed it would settle tens of thousands of people. The Home Office.
We're going to cover the Rwanda stuff soon. The costs, it's just spiraled out of control. To be honest, it was never going to work. It was meant to be red meat to the base, but they've kind of mistimed it. I think for it to be red meat, because everyone's now asking why is it not working for.
Then whittled it down to a mere 300. 4 times that number have already arrived this month, and the backlog stands at 130,000. Can the Prime Minister see any flaw in his plan to deport less than 1% of that backlog?
Mr. Speaker, since I became Prime Minister, the number of small boat crossings are actually down by over a third, Mr. Speaker. And
it's relative, though. It depends on what he's comparing it to. Like, the numbers do fluctuate, but overall they have been much higher over the last few years, because people are desperate. Asylum seekers. There's no safe points of entry for the vast majority of countries or people trying to seek refuge here. There's only a few that do get safe points of entry. His argument doesn't make sense, because when they talk about a third or half, all these things, they're all relative to their own numbers.
Because we've doubled National Crime Agency funding, we've increased the illegal enforcement rates by 70%, we've closed...
I mean percentages here. Percentages are generally can be deceptive, because it depends what you're comparing it to.
7,500 bank accounts, deported 24,000 illegal migrants, and processed over 112,000 cases, more than at any point in the last 2 decades.
It's because they let the backlog get that bad, that they can, now put more staff in and kind of process more. But we have seen kind of over the last 2 decades, the world has become increasingly more unstable. It's way more unstable now than it was under the new Labour government, and so there will be more people claiming asylum.
Speaker, And it's crystal clear, as we're seeing from the Labour Party's opposition in this House, while we're committed to stopping the boats, the Labour Party would keep them coming.
The tragedy is, we know the Prime Minister doesn't even believe in the Rwanda gimmick. He tried to stop funding it, but he's now so diminished that his entire focus is stopping his MPs.
That's true. You know, Sunak was when Sunak was in the Treasury, he was against the Rwanda plan because the costs, it wasn't worth it.
Holding the sword of Damocles above his head, perhaps even literally in the case of the Leader of the House.
Still quite Petty Mordaunt. That's a land. That punch landed.
Stings, doesn't it?
Yeah, that one landed.
His great hope is to percolate his party with a couple of empty planes, praying they won't notice when the flights stop going, the boat's still coming, and the costs keep mounting. How has he managed to spend £600 million of taxpayer money on a gimmick to deport 300 people?
It gets worse when the Tories were talking about the astronomical cost of the kind of housing asylum seekers in hotels, which they had to do because they weren't processing claims. And you find out the Biblic Stockholm, which actively made people ill, actually cost more. Their secondary program actually costs more than just putting them in hotels and processing their claims. Wild, I know.
Mr. Speaker, it's crystal clear. Not only does the Labour Party not have a plan to fix this issue, but the truth is they don't actually care about fixing this issue. When he talks about the gangs, when we gave the police new powers to crack down on the people smuggling gangs, he spent months campaigning and voting against it. But thanks to our new laws, 900 criminals have been arrested. 450 have been convicted, serving over 370 years behind bars. If it was up to him, those criminals would still be out on our streets, Mr. Speaker. And the truth is...
I mean, that's not true, because doing that kind of people smuggling is illegal. So the whole argument doesn't make sense, especially when we know policing has been decimated by the Tories. So the argument of under Labour they would be free, it genuinely doesn't make sense.
The truth is, if he wasn't the Labour leader, he'd still want to be their lawyer.
You'd think that's a good shot, but the problem is Starmer's counter's actually really good.
Stop.
Speaker, I've prosecuted more people smugglers than he's had helicopter rides, and that's a lot. And this, I've done it. Rwanda gimmick is going to cost...
Going after Starmer's CPS record on this specific issue is just a dumb idea from Sunak. He's really let himself be open to a big counter there, a jolt counter, and fair play to Starmer.
The taxpayer £2 million for every one of his 300 people that they deport. And I know the Prime Minister likes to spend a lot on jet setting, but that's some plane ticket.
He's got to either stop with the crappy jokes, or he's got to practice them a lot more, because he kind of stumbles. It's like he's got a writer, and he's not comfortable with the lines he's given, because that's one hell of a plane ticket, or whatever he said there. He's got to either refine it or drop it.
Cost of Tory chaos, and it's working people who are paying the price. The man he made his immigration minister let the cat out of the bag when he said the Prime Minister's symbolic flights will not provide a credible deterrent. And we know the Prime Minister himself thought it wouldn't work. If the people selling this gimmick don't believe in it, why should the country?
Mr. Speaker, he's very keen to talk about who he prosecuted. He's a bit less keen to talk about when he defended Hizbut Tahrir, Mr. Speaker.
I thought he was going to talk about a certain person who liked children there. I thought that's where he was going with that one. But again, for barristers and things like that, like, they don't really get a choice in who they defend. So that argument, again, doesn't make sense. It kind of makes a mockery of the legal system, because, again, everyone should be entitled to legal representation.
When it comes to this question of how to deal with people who are here illegally, his values are simply not those of the British people. After all,
the British people don't back the Rwanda plan, so I don't think your values align with the British people's.
Person who campaigned to stop the deportation of foreign dangerous criminals, Mr. Speaker. A dangerous criminal was jailed for dealing Class A drugs after he fought to keep him here. A gangmaster was convicted of carrying a knife after he fought to keep him here. So whether it's representing terrorists or campaigning for criminals, it's clear whose side he's on, and it's not the British people.
It's not bad. Not bad. A couple of attacks there.
It's genuinely sad to see him reduced to this nonsense. And let's take another example that I started with. After 14 years of Tory chaos in the prison system, the Justice Secretary is reduced to begging the Prime Minister either to send fewer offenders to prison or to release them even earlier. I must have got sympathy for anyone trying to get an answer out of the Prime Minister. So what's it going to be? Fewer criminals behind bars in the first place, or more released early onto our streets?
Yeah, these are all factual statements that he's making there. Like there were times last year when they couldn't even send people to the prisons. They had them in the holding cells because the prisons were full, because the Tories have absolutely decimated the prison system. It's bad.
Is it?
Mr. Speaker, thanks to our record and plan, violent crime has fallen by 50%, Mr. Speaker.
Relative to what though? Like, it doesn't, like, to what last year's figures, 5 years ago's figures, 2010's figures. What are you talking about?
Recruiting more police officers, giving them more powers, and
You've also gotten rid of a lot of good police officers from 2010. That's what happened. The Tories got rid of a lot of police officers, especially the veteran ones, and then they tried to recruit more recently. And it turns out the vetting process for those police officers, not great at all.
kept serious offenders in prison for longer. What's his record? He voted against greater protection for our emergency workers, opposed tougher...
The Tories, what they do is they make toxic bills. What they do is they put one or two good things in a really bad bill, and then they'll say, oh, Labour didn't vote for these great things in this bill, but then it's not worth doing. It's something the Republicans do in America a lot.
Sentences for violent criminals and failed to give police the powers they need. It would be back to square one with Labour, soft on crime and soft on criminals.
You can see why he doesn't want an election, why his party have lost faith in him, why half his cabinet are lining up to replace him. No answers, no plan, no clue. And the Prime Minister has never had the courage to stand up to his party. So let me help him out and say to them what he wishes he could. The mortgage mayhem, the waiting list, the criminals walking free, they are the costs of Tory chaos. And if they can't bring themselves to stop the endless games and gimmicks, stop putting themselves before country, they should pack up, go home, and waste somebody else's time. It wasn't that difficult, was it, Prime Minister?
Again, he starts off really strong and then he just falls off. He's got to really sharpen up his delivery, I think, a little bit, especially as we head into election season.
Mr. Speaker, he talks...
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about his ideas, but we're 2 weeks on from the budget. The Shadow Chancellor found time to make a 1-hour speech last night, and we still don't know how they're going to pay for that £28 billion black hole. But while
I mean, they've gotten rid of the Green New Deal, whatever they called it. So, I mean, he must be a couple of years behind, a couple of months behind in some of the attack lines he's gone for, pre-written stuff from weeks ago.
he tries to talk down Britain and the progress that we are making, today's news shows that the plan is working. Inflation down, Mr. Speaker. Energy bills down. Wages up, pensions up, and taxes cut by £900. And that is the choice. Higher taxes and back to square one with Labour, or tax cuts and real change with the Conservatives.
Mr. Speaker, the UK birth rate is falling.
We're going to skip the filler and we're going to cut to the big man. There he is.
Have warned of the conspiracy of silence which exists between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party when it comes to £18 billion of looming public sector cuts. Indeed, just last night, they actually outlined that the fiscal rules of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party are in effect identical. So with such...
Yeah, I think Rachel Reeves has said that. I think people have drawn a lot of comparisons, the media have, to Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules and also Jeremy Hunt's fiscal rules around GDP ratios and the amounts, etc. So he's not wrong here.
With such continuity on offer, Mr. Speaker, the public are right to be anti-Westminster, aren't they?
Oof.
Stings, doesn't it?
Ooh, that's a rough one right there.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised to hear him quoting the IFS, because the IFS also described the recent SNP budget as, in their words, misleading, and said in their words that pain is almost certainly coming. It is a savage tax and acts budget, Mr. Speaker, a savage tax and acts budget. Because here's the reality of it. Whilst NHS spending in England is going up in real terms, in Scotland it is going down, Mr. Speaker.
And yet the NHS in Scotland is doing better than the one in England. So make that make sense, big man.
And while taxes are being cut by the UK government, it is the SNP government that is putting them up. And that is the contrast. Where the
I mean, to be fair, your economic plans have been shown to actually have a real terms, I think, just a minimal lowering of tax on working people. The main beneficiaries of it are middle-class earners, I think. So you're talking nonsense again, pal.
SNP or indeed Labour are in charge. It's working people that pay the price.
Highest tax burden since World War II, but okay, bud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, crap. Was that both of Flynn's questions? No, where was the other one? Is it this?
A candidate to replace him.
I would join her encouraging all companies to sign up to the Fertility Workplace Pledge.
This question is a banger, so funny.
SNP leader Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, with his backbenchers looking for a unity candidate to replace him, which of the now numerous born-again Thatcherites on the Labour front bench does he believe best fits the bill?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it was surprising to hear all this talk about the 1970s from the Shadow Chancellor in particular. But then if you see what's happening in places like Birmingham, where taxes are going up by 21%, Mr. Speaker, services are being cut, whether it's...
you can talk about Birmingham all day, but, you know, there are councils like Woking who are doing absolutely abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. You know, you're talking, I think it's in the billions worth of debt. Like, how a council is in over £1 billion worth of debt is honestly astounding. So they can talk about Birmingham all day, but when you look at the Tory councils that have fumbled the bag, and these were councils that actually did get more protection than kind of Labour councils did from the Tories and austerity. Don't want to hear it, big man. Honestly, until you talk about the main bankrupt councils, even mine in Northampton, like mine was not doing great either. Still isn't. It's so bad they actually had to change the whole system. That's how cooked it was. So again, like, he can talk about Birmingham all day, but he hasn't got a leg to stand on.
Social care, children's services, or indeed, in some streets, literally the lights are being turned off.
That's ironic, because not far from my house, the Tories literally switched the lights off. They took I think they took the bulbs out the streetlights or something, but a lot of them went off. That whole street is dark. It's dangerous at night because it's very muddy. So that's a really ironic statement he's just made there, given the Tory role in taking out streetlights and things like that. That is tragic.
Unsurprising why they're talking about the 70s, and I can just say what they've done to Birmingham.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, audience, right? Wasn't the 70s not good in terms of 3-day work weeks and stuff? Wasn't that before Thatcher came in? Enlighten me, please, audience.
Conservatives will never let them do to Britain.
You've literally done most of that, but okay, bud. Yeah, I think Sunak kind of struggling a bit here. His kind of punchlines weren't landing that great. I think this was a really good performance. I think from a good performance from Starmer and a really good performance from Flynn. But you know, it's not surprising from Flynn. To be fair, I think he does really well at PMQs because he's got more of a target-rich environment. He can take shots at the Labour Party and at the Tory Party, whereas Labour are more focused on the Tories. So it's more easy for the SNP. And to be fair, both parties give them such big openings. Why not take them? But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.